and keeping up with what we talked about last week. Leadership just isn't about vision or growth. It's about making those hard calls.
If we have to cut a program because it's just not working, and that involves people's employment and livelihood, those have always been the toughest for us.
Even with sports teams, sometimes change is needed.
And I remember you just were completely beside yourself.
I was a little bit of a nervous wreck. Well, hey, we made it happen. We pivoted.
Those friends or spiritual mentors, when those kind of things happen, you want to get advice from other people.
We find ourselves in a lot of times in high pressure situations, whether we're dealing with care or, at this point, 550 different staff members, and there's always kind of problems that arise throughout the day.
He'll just get really frustrated and stop and look at me and say, "Mom, did you even think about that?" I said, "Sure I did, just for a couple seconds."
Yeah, you're really good at going with your gut.
Well, I know a big decision that your dad and I, disagreed on a long time ago, but it was the...
Sure did. Exactly right.
To go get some ice cream.
Yes. And it's so exciting to be a part of.
It'd be amazing.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest things I think we've learned.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. We appreciate you being here. We got an exciting show planned today, but without further ado, find your comfiest chair and pull up a seat right here to Around the Table with Vickie. I'm your co-host, Chris Runk, and as always, across the table from me is my mother, your host, Vickie Runk.
Always good to say hello to everybody.
And Mom, we are continuing this show, so it's going part 2 from what we did last week. Had a great topic about tough decisions and turning points in our company history. And in order to discuss that, we had to have Dad himself, Brian Runk, on the show. So I'd like to welcome back to the show, Dad.
Glad to be here.
You're not getting much work done these days, are you?
I know. You guys are keeping me busy.
You just kind of stay in the studio these days.
Just get summoned and I just come.
Well, it's great that you paid for the studio, so now you're able to be here, enjoy it, and use it. So
And it's right next door to his office, so we can always pull him away for a little while.
That's right.
Mom, before we jump in on this show, I do want to briefly talk about a really fun, super huge community event that we have coming up on June 28th out at Ivy Hill Golf Club, and that is called Light Up the Lawn, which is our big fireworks show celebrating 4th of July.
As a nod to your dad, because he loves fireworks, and this year he gave you the go-ahead to make it bigger and better. I don't know how it could get much bigger, but I can't wait to see.
I can't wait either. It's going to be great.
So that's we have a lot of food vendors prepared to come in and blow-ups and toys and great things for the kids to enjoy.
For those of you that follow Cravables, they're on this show at least once a year. They're going to be out there, and some of the funds, all of the funds that they have are going to be used towards, keeping Cravables going and paying those able-bodied, younger adults to be able to stay open and work. And so we want you to come by and visit their food truck and support them. There's so many different others that are coming too. But we welcomed last year almost 8,000 people. Pretty much onto our driving range and watched a wonderful show of fireworks. We have music and so much connection with families. We joked about the little kids playing in the sand pits, and they felt like they were at the ocean, I think.
Yeah, that was a slight oversight on my end. We have these giant blow up toys for the kids, and they're right out there on the chipping green. And I remember going down and parents were loving it, and the kids were sliding and having the best time. And then I look over into our bunkers around the chipping green, and I quickly realized those basically became the beach.
Yes, they did.
For the children. And so we had to put some sand back, but that's all good. But yeah.
What fun, though, to see the little ones out there, and
that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about,
Celebrating
bringing the community
America,
together.
Bringing the community together. We started with about 2,000 people.
Yes.
Our first year. We've been doing it about 4 or 5 years now. And like you said, we've grown it over to 8,000 people. So we will be opening the doors at 5 p.m. that day. Fireworks will be going off at 9:30. We actually had to shut down attendance last year because we had so many people. So make sure you get there early. You do not want to miss the fireworks.
There's only we can't park you in a certain spot because the fireworks can't, get to where they're taking off if we get the cars down to a certain point. So we will have to shut off They're very specific about that as well.
Fireworks company.
Yeah.
Got to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, so please
But
come out and join us.
make sure you get there early. But yeah, if you got nothing to do, I hope to see you June 28th at Ivy Hill Golf
Even if
Club.
you do, you're going to want to cancel it for Light Up
you
the
don't
Line.
want to miss this. You're sitting on the driving range. I don't think you can get any closer to fireworks in our area. It's amazing.
The backdrops of the mountains, and of course, Ivy Hill's been there for so long. It's a staple here.
We have a wonderful band coming in. So we're excited for the music, and we got some special band members coming in from Nashville. So it's going to be a great time.
Yeah, and so much noise going on in the news about who's right and who's wrong in politics. And I think we just get back to basics and celebrate the history of America and the fact that we lived in the greatest country in the world, and we're a free country, and we want to celebrate those that have lost their lives, fighting for our country, our veterans. We want to celebrate families. This is a time we go back to just good old-fashioned family values, and we want to celebrate that. So come out and join us.
But Dad, thank you for the fireworks.
My pleasure.
If people don't know, Dad's a massive fireworks fan. So
love Disney, love any kind of fireworks. I'm all about it. So when he said we could upgrade, I said let's go for it.
Let's do it. All right. Well, jumping in on keeping up with what we talked about last week, Mom, talking about leadership and tough calls and turning points in company's history. How would you say that, upon personal reflection, leadership just isn't about vision or growth. It's about making those hard calls.
Well, it certainly is. And, I look back over 33 years, you and I both, we've made some really difficult calls that were necessary for the growth of our company. It could be severing a relationship with an employee that has been with us for a great number of years. And, you hear the analogy that, some employees are just not meant to be with you forever, and they're there for a specific time. But boy, it gets to us whenever we've developed close relationships, and it's just time for that employee to move on to something different. And they got us through a season, but now it's time. In order for us to grow, the thought patterns of that employee has changed, and they can't get that high up. They can't reach as high up as we need them to reach. And so we got to bring in somebody else that's qualified. And those are really tough times for us because we're so connected with the people that help us grow. And I think that's some of the, if you look back over 33 years, that's been some of the toughest times, is severing relationships with people that we know are really good people, but they've only been sent to us for a time. And then we have to make the decision that it's now time to let them go on to something different. And inevitably, we see them back around, and God's put them in good position, and in us, sending them on their way help catapult them into God's new will for them. And so we always try to keep good relationships, but those are some of the toughest decisions we've had to make. Or if we have to cut a program because it's just not working, and that involves people's employment and livelihood. Those have always been the toughest for us.
Yeah, I think anything that deals with people's livelihood is tough. It's like sometimes, even with sports teams, sometimes change is needed. It's tough to make, and you oftentimes can't see the benefit of what that's going to be because you're so used to how things were.
But when you have the right team members on your team, you can see the touchdowns being made and more touchdowns being made, and the team starting to solidify relationships with each other, and all of a sudden it just gets to be to where you got a championship team on your hand.
Well, there's been times I know that you get comfortable with where you are and things seem to be going good, and you can't really fathom things being different than how they are, because in your mind they're all working well, and then you go through a change, you hire new people, which ultimately brings other change, which is difficult. But at the end of the day, it's always been good. And it's just the growth. It's like sometimes you got to prune things back for it to grow, and you don't always see it because you get comfortable in the things that you know about, and sometimes it's hard to work with things that are new. But there's always sunshine the next day. You just got to go through it.
And there's very few employees that are really meant for the entire journey. Very few, a very small percentage.
Mom, was there ever a moment when you underestimated or overestimated something critical, and how did you recover?
Yeah, I think I remember, really just some of this is going to stay in the COVID years, because that was a memory that will forever be changed in our industry, and that was in hospitality and healthcare. We took a really big hit. But whenever you're at the helm of operating something that big with healthcare and it involves saving lives, then you carry a burden like, I will never forget those days. I will never forget the phone calls coming in and the constant sense of urgency all the time. And one of the things that we did is we shut the facility down to visitation a week before the national decree that we had to. And I took a big hit for that. But and so families didn't understand it until 7 days later when it became policy all over the United States. But looking back now, it was the right thing for me to do. And I think I saved a lot of lives by doing that. But you get very lonely in those decisions that are being made that are not popular. And then we lost some staff because of, people just being scared of that, of the pandemic itself and not understanding there was a safe way to be able to give care. So in 2020, I think the idea that I needed to shut down visitation a week early was one of the hardest decisions because I'm taking families away from each other. And I knew that it was going to hold a very big cloud for a while. And after I got through the first 7 days, then all of a sudden it was like, see, I tried to tell you this was coming, and everything was fine with accepting that. But just knowing that we're separating families, that was a really big deal back then.
Dad, how would you say that you know when to pivot or when to persevere?
Good question. I think those things are always in a constant realm of motion. I mean, I think you come up with a plan, you follow your plan, whatever route you take to get there, your goal is to make it work. Sometimes it works well and it works exactly how it was planned. Sometimes it doesn't. But when it doesn't, you really have to deal with where you are, make adjustments, meet with your team, get counsel, make the best choice that you can.
And that's when you pivot.
That's when you pivot. But, hopefully you don't have to do that. But I think the big thing is be open to that. Mm-hmm. I mean, you really can't force what you think is right. We've had that as a family. Sometimes you have everybody's input, and sometimes what one of us thought was the right way, we have to sort of be open to those ideas.
You don't do real well at pivoting, Christopher.
Hey,
so you might want to.
Not me.
You might want to add something
there.
How you've had to learn that that's necessary. I think our listeners would like to hear that.
Well, I think at anybody managing a team or a company or at an upper level of management, I think you always are constantly pivoting.
But it's not your favorite thing.
It's not my favorite thing to do because there's a plan, and we've taken a lot of time and effort and energy to develop that plan and really hone it in and make sure it's solid and it works financially and it works for all the team members involved, and we got every T crossed and I dotted, and inevitably, there'll be a new piece of information or somebody is sick and can't make that meeting or can't make the plan. And so, I mean, if you cannot pivot, I think you're in a really bad place.
And lots of times it's the history in this family that something will come sooner than we planned. And that's what you have a terribly hard time with. And I remember just recently you looked at me and said, why can't we just stick to the plan?
Yeah.
And one of the things I said was, you have to be ready when that ball gets thrown to you, just like a baseball could been from the mound. You have to be ready to get behind there and get your bat ready to hit, even though you weren't prepared. You got to hit that ball. And that's just part of business. And there's no rhyme or reason to it. And you really can't explain that to people. Mm-hmm. It depends on what industry you're in and what kind of business you're trying to grow. But opportunities will come really fast to you. I'm thinking of another opportunity that we just had here on Around the Table with Vickie that we'll be announcing soon. We thought we had 30 days to be able to prepare for a high-profile guest to come on. And God just laughed at us because we literally had less than 48 hours.
Yeah.
And I remember you just were completely beside yourself.
I was a little bit of a nervous wreck. Well, hey, we made it happen. We pivoted.
Yes.
And I think the best teams can pivot. And
that's a key point, because I think if it was just 2 or 3 people making these choices, that's one thing because you can sort of force a plan. But when you're working with people on a team, you really got to see how the team works, that chemistry, especially if you have some new team players, and you have to know people's areas where they're good at and make sure they're in those areas that they're good at to see your plan succeed, because it's all in how you manage the team, use your assets that you have. And I think that good leaders are able to utilize those team members in the proper way, but you really got to always be open to actually pivot if you have to, because sometimes that's a big call, but it makes the biggest changes.
And pivoting doesn't always have a negative effect on your business. Most of the time, the pivot means you're getting ready to go to a new level or get something within your business that you did not expect. It's one of those God wink moments that God sends to you. And most of the time, it's meant to better you.
And every plan, most of the time, at least with us, they don't always come out as they're written down. There's always left turns, right turns. There's always changes. But you have to look at those throughout and try to find out what you need to do to maximize that. And again, a lot of it comes with your players that are involved as well.
Are you saying that all the plans aren't always fully fleshed out, Dad? That they're
100%.
The big deal is just to get rolling, right?
I think you have to have yes. I think that's the key point.
You sound like you're speaking from experience.
Yeah.
You just have to start. I mean, if you
got to get rolling.
You can get the ball rolling.
You can figure it out as you go, but you got to get it rolling.
Our architect, we laugh because we will have already done a plan by the time we give it to our architect. And he was like, well, you might as well go ahead and build it and then I'll come design it.
Yeah.
And so we have that little fun relationship with him. He's like, why am I really here? You already have it figured out.
Very few things go exactly as you have your first plan. There are always things that have been in motion and adapting, and you really have to know that's just part of it.
Well, and I still think back that those are all God wink moments, something that God has sent our way that we were not expecting. And so we know we got to act upon it right now, which is, that's always fun to go through.
And this next question kind of builds off that. And Mom, this is something you're really great at, but what's harder, making a fast decision under pressure or waiting patiently for the right decision to become clear?
It's easy for me to make a fast decision. So I think it's going to be harder for me to sit and wait. I'm not a waiter. I am not a procrastinator.
Are you saying you're slightly impatient?
I am impatient, but
I'll second that.
I'm also fairly good, only because I'm getting older now. I'm fairly good at making really quick decisions that I feel comfortable with and 100% at peace. And you cannot do that.
I lag behind just a little. Just a little.
You're really good at going with your gut. Sometimes I think most of the times that first way that something hits you is usually how that works out. And even if it's not the right plan, you can always pivot. You can always adjust.
Still a safe place.
Yes.
Because I understand it. But so many times he's following behind me. And we talked on the show the other day how we're mentoring Christopher now. And he'll just get really frustrated and stop and look at me and say, Mom, did you even think about that? I said, sure I did, just for a couple seconds. And he just kind of shaking his head. So,
something that I probably would have taken me a week to decide, Mom decides in about 30 seconds. And she's like, just do it. Just go. Just do it.
Well, and that gets easier as you do more of it. I mean, I think when you're younger and you're learning those things, you're just uncertain. You're just unsure. And I think the more that you do it and you've come through some things that maybe you had to pivot on and you had to adjust on. Once you do it, you get more comfortable with learning how to actually do that. But the biggest thing is just getting started. If you just get started, you can always make something work. It may not look like you thought it was at the end, but it will always work out.
Either as a couple or even as a family, and I know the answer to this, so it's kind of rhetorical. Have we ever disagreed on a big decision, and how did we go about handling that?
Well, I know a big decision that your dad and I, disagreed on a long time ago, but it was the design, build, and actually turning the dirt on the Smith Mountain Lake facility. I was very much against that. And he was determined that that was the right thing to do. So doing the biblical thing, I submitted and supported, but I probably wasn't all in it. I let him do a lot of heavy.
I mean, you weren't. I mean, to be honest, the fact was, it was something that you helped me with, but you were not as involved as we've been in other projects.
That's right.
It was more my project, and you had to grow into the project. And back when that first started, your dad was still with us too. So he was my partner. And we brought you in on all the design stuff. But it took you a little bit of time to warm up to that. And then once you got on board and you got your feet wet with it, you were good. But it wasn't something you were bought in fully. That's probably the only time that's really ever happened for us.
Yeah, probably so.
But in your defense, wasn't that also our very first out of the ground build?
Yes.
Like from the start, we
And
had
it was so far
acquired
away.
other
Yeah,
properties.
that was your big thing, is the distance. I mean, it's easy with stuff that we do that's local, because most of our projects are local. We can, jump in a car and be there in 10 minutes, 30 minutes at max.
I was more afraid of the fact that I'm so used to if I'm needed, which I'm not anymore the way I used to be, but back in that day, it was very typical for me to need to be on site with a family or with a client and a resident, and there was something that I would need to assist with or help make a decision on. And so driving 45 minutes up the road and 45, I didn't even know if I could get there in time. So the Lord really stretched my vision to understand that I needed to learn a new style of leadership, which would be a lot of coaching and a lot of mentoring the staff that was there, on training them exactly what my expectations were and not having to physically be in the building. And so he made a lot of trips up there just to check on things, and still does. But I think that was the biggest thing we've disagreed on.
And that building also is located in the Westlake Town Center up there.
Mm-hmm.
Also, another new thing for us on that build was the fact of the independent cottages around the care facility. That was a new model for us as well.
12 years later, we're doing it here locally, which that prepared us for. So, yeah.
What would you say is something that you learned along the way and you are better now because of it?
I think for me, you never can have everything, like your past question about, to be patient or to just sort of jump in. I think you do all your homework, you prep as much as you can, but the anxiety that we used to have, or I used to have when I was younger, about making sure timing was right and stuff like that, you do all you can do. When all of the things come back to say it's time to make it happen, you just got to trust your gut, and you got to make it happen. It's been 33 years for us, and some things are easier than others, but I think that you learn that you, again, just have to get things rolling, and once you get it rolling, they get easier.
I think for me, the biggest thing that I've learned, and I really have preached to you kids in our family, is to always be grateful, even for the struggles. And I had to learn that the hard way. When you're used to everything going perfect and you never have to struggle at anything, then you don't tend to even think that a hardship could come. And when hardships do come, you have to learn to be grateful for every moment of that, because inevitably God is getting you prepared for either a huge growth in your company or more solid ground to stand on that will solidify your business to even be more valuable. So I've had to learn to be grateful in the hard times.
Yeah, I think that you learn and take something from every situation.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't always just think that everything's going to be good, because they aren't. And I think you grow much, much deeper, and you gain much more when you go through struggles, because at the time you really don't know why you go through them and what's involved with them. But when you're done with them, you can always find something in those that have helped you grow.
And helping new business owners understand that there will be hard times. Like starting a business, operating a business, saying that you're a business owner, that sounds so great. But there are a lot of valleys that you have to walk through, and you have to teach them how to be grateful in the hard times, or they'll never really make it.
Yeah, well, it's not just business in life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nobody is on the mountain all the time. I mean, people may look like they are and everything else, but they're not. And you grow when you're in those valleys, or those times that you're not sure where you're going. Your faith in God is important, and faith in each other, and dependent on your family and your employees. All that's important. But you really just got to take the first step and step out. But you got to look at those times of harder times as times of growth.
And it's funny because there's so much like on social media, like start a gratitude journal. And I used to think that's so silly. I can be thankful right in my mind and I don't need to write anything down. But it is powerful when you put the pen to paper and you start listing all the things that you have to be grateful for, all of the things that are going wrong on the other column just slowly end up being very small compared to what you
I've
could be
actually done
thankful
that once, and I still have all those notes because at the time it was helped in your mind to specifically pinpoint those things. And then, when it's years down the road, you go back and you can look at that and you can look how that actually helped you.
You talk about the hard moments. I mean, whenever you're unsure of the path forward and what is the right decision, who do you guys look to? Do you look to each other? I know you have strong faith. Kind of walk me through that process of knowing.
We definitely bounce things back and forth to each other. And, I just think at the end of the day, we both have to be comfortable. If I'm comfortable and he's not, it's not going to work. If he's comfortable and I'm not, it is most definitely
100%.
That's definitely true.
So, when we can bounce something back and forth a little while, go to dinner one night, just the two of us, and say, we need to do this, and here's why, or we need to hold back and not. I think it's that whole thing that we've talked about on the show before. If that piece of that puzzle just will not fit into that last hole, then you need to run from the decision that you're making because it should be easy for you to see.
And sometimes you got to get counsel. You have close friends or spiritual mentors. When those kind of things happen, you want to get advice from other people because the Bible says there's wisdom
That's right.
in counsel. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. And I think even with us, sometimes, probably not a lot, we're not always 100% on everything. I may be 60 and you may be 35. But if we still feel together that we understand it's a benefit and we're both on board, I don't know if we've ever done anything where the other one has just not wanted to do it because we always just don't do that. You have to be, on the same page with that kind of stuff. So I don't think there's ever been that. But it's okay if you're not 100% committed because sometimes those things they're just not clear. And that's sometimes part of the fun, but that's sometimes part of the struggle is that's why it's hard to start. That's what comes back again to just getting things started and getting things rolling. When that happens, then where the real leadership happens is being able to make changes on the fly. When things happen and they don't go as planned, being able to adapt and pivot is really, really important.
And rally the team.
Yeah.
Mom, how would you say we find ourselves in a lot of times in high pressure situations, whether we're dealing with care or at this point, 550 different staff members, and there's always kind of problems that arise throughout the day. How do you stay steady in high pressure situations?
Well, I'm just always going to make sure that as my thought process takes place, that I'm considering the worst and the best of the situation. And then at the end of trying to make that decision, I want to consider the employee or the family, and then what's best for our company, and try to take either it's 65% or 85%, but he's right, it's never 100% for sure. And then, though, be the kind of leader that if I didn't get it just right for all three of those components, I'm big enough to go back and change a decision. And sometimes leaders don't like to do that because ego gets in the way. But more times than not, I'm still finagling that deal. I'm massaging that deal that I had just sent out as that this is my decision. If something comes back that I need to reconsider, I need to be a big enough leader to go back in and adjust that deal.
She's really right on that. That's a big point. I think sometimes you get so caught up in this is the way that's supposed to be, and you're too prideful to know that sometimes you got to rearrange your plan. And most of the time you do.
And not to let your own emotion, and goodness gracious, I'm the queen of that, not to let your own emotion dominate your decision based on how upset you may be at the time with whatever situation that you're trying to lead in and solve. You almost have to learn to take a back seat and put those emotions aside and do what is right.
And I can second that because a lot of times she will set forth the plan or how we're going to handle this situation. And, I kind of jump in to help where I can. And, about 12, 24 hours later, she sends a follow-up email. And it's like, actually, I've thought about it a little bit more. I'm going to readjust and we're going to do this instead. And
Well, that's big with her because, like you said, she responds to things quickly. She's somewhat impulsive in a good way. Whatever hits her first is usually her best idea. So she's really big on taking that first idea, making it happen. But then she's also able to, once she thinks about it, be able to make the adjustments that you have to.
Talking about pivoting again.
Yeah, it's just like a game plan in sports. You prepare for any kind of game. You have a game plan. You prepare all your players. But at some point in time, somebody maybe has done better job at getting ready than you have. And as a coach, you have to make those kind of changes. And I think it's the same thing as you're leading your team.
Mm-hmm.
well, sadly, it's that time. We have to end the show, but we're going to keep talking about this a little bit more for next week. So we're excited to have some more follow-up questions. Appreciate you being here, Dad, as always.
Absolutely.
And Mom, to end the show, I know you have a special quote in store for us, so the floor is yours.
Well, I didn't know exactly what we were going to talk about today, but goodness, it fits right in with what you've said. It truly just means trust God no matter what. So in Jeremiah 29:11, it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans that are good. They don't cause for disaster. They give you a future and a hope." Jeremiah 29:11. Look that up if you ever need reassurance that we just need to trust God in all that we do, no matter what our circumstances. I'm Vickie, and I'm right here around the table. I'll see you next week as we finish this one up.